All right, let's talk about the Georgia Bulldogs. Obviously, the season ended the way no one had really hoped when it comes to the Dogs, but this team isn't resting on its laurels. Of course, they are trying to reload and prepare for the 2025 campaign. And with that in mind, it looks like the Georgia Bulldogs are about to pull off a massive transfer move, excuse me. Exciting news out of Athens. But first, I'm Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, this Georgia program getting ready for the 2025 season. Now is the time to act. You've been eliminated, of course, but you do have one advantage. You're still Georgia. You're still one of, if not the marquee names in all college football. And to that end, it looks like the Dogs are about to pull off a big time transfer addition. Let's pull up this report courtesy of Athlon Sports. On Monday, On Three's Pete Nakos predicted former Texas A&M receiver Noah Thomas would land with the Georgia Bulldogs. Thomas was a former four-star prospect in the 2022 class. He is the top available wide receiver in the transfer portal, as the others above him have already committed to new programs. Thomas is the number 10 wide receiver in the On Three transfer portal industry rankings. Obviously, this is a great sign if the On Three predicts Georgia to land this receiver here. Of course, On Three is one of the best predictive markets, analysts, whatever you want to call them, when it comes to nailing down transfers and recruits. They're a great resource. So I think it's a high probability event that Georgia pulls off this move, and it's a much needed position where the Georgia Bulldogs definitely need some help. Miles, I know you've got a few thoughts on this, but first, Dogs fans in the comment section below. I think wide receiver is probably the biggest position of need, but let us know what you think is the biggest position of need for the Georgia Bulldogs this offseason to address. Is it receiver? Heck, is it quarterback? Or is it another position group? Whatever it is, give us the position of need you think Georgia really needs to focus on this offseason and put it in the comment section below. But Miles, what are your thoughts on this latest news out of Georgia?
Yeah, Nick, I think this is a really strong move for Georgia if they're able to get this one pulled off because Georgia, it's still a really good team. We don't like what happened in the game against Notre Dame. Obviously, that's a tough loss, but what do you expect when your quarterback goes down? That's going to be tough for anyone to perform. I think the defense still performed very admirably against a tough Notre Dame team. So I think coming in, they really didn't lose as much momentum as people might have thought like, oh, they lose college football playoff game. I I think that they are still just there. Everyone understands this is a team that lost as quarterback, and they can still recruit. This is still a very powerful program. With all of that being said, I think that this is a really fantastic move because when you look at the 2025 recruiting class for Georgia, a lot of their top end talent, rightfully so, this is a very defensively based program. They have a lot of great five-star guys on the defensive side of the ball. Heck, even their top 5 or 6 recruits, period, are all defensive guys. So being able to bring in a veteran player who's also very talented as an offensive guy in the wide receiver side of things, I think that's going to be really, really good for this program because having a quarterback, new quarterback, whoever is going to end up being, come in through this new Georgia team, they're gonna need some veteran guys on the offensive side of the ball. They're gonna need some veteran playmakers, keep things going. And a guy like this who's so talented and Thomas, I think this is a really good move, especially a guy who's already used to playing in the SEC. I know it's probably not that big of a deal nowadays, but it is a little different. So Big Ten, SEC, the talent level is getting to be a lot different than every other conference or every other division in all of college football. So I think having guys that are familiar with that competition already gives them a slight leg up. And he's super talented as well. So this was a big get for Georgia. I think it's going to be really strong for them going forward. And I really like moves like this showing that Kirby Smart can go out even after a loss in a college football playoff game and get the number one wide receiver in the portal. Really strong move for Georgia.
Yeah, I also think it's sound strategy, right? Obviously, Kirby Smart and this Georgia Bulldogs team, they know how to recruit and develop defensive talent in spades. They've been doing it, especially front seven players, but DBs too, for Kirby Smart's entire tenure. There is a question mark at the skill position, right? I mean, look, there's been some good players, undeniably so, but obviously it's not nearly the same as we see on defense, right? What happens on offense, it's a little bit more here and there anecdotal, right? You've got Bowers, you've got McConkey, every once in a while Pickens, I guess, right? You don't throw that name out there. It's sort of isolated incidents when it comes to skill players on offense, whereas it's a treasure trove of recruiting talent and development on defense. What does that mean? It means you got to be not afraid to use the portal. You got to have a little self awareness and say, okay, Kirby Smart, Georgia, am the absolute undeniable best at recruiting and developing top defensive talent across the board. I'm pretty darn good at offensive line play too when it comes to recruiting and developing. I'm not quite as good at the skill positions. Let me not just rely on recruiting. Let me go out in the transfer portal and help offset that a little bit. I love the self awareness. So many of these big time coaches, it happens all the time when they reach a certain level of success. They kind of feel like I don't have to play by the same rules. I can do things my way. We see this with Clemson and Dabo Swinney. It's a phenomenal example. Dabo Swinney has moral apprehension against a transfer portal. Whether you agree with him or not, he's honestly he's hurting his team by not humbling himself enough to say, okay, what's in the best interest for my program, to turn away from what I'm good at, what I want to do, and what's best for the long term. Kirby Smart, Georgia doesn't have that approach. Georgia with Kirby Smart, they look at the situation and go, okay, we can still recruit the heck out of defense. We can still develop the heck out of a defense. The program, need to do better with retaining and building offensive talent. The recruiting game ain't doing enough. I need to go out and find guys in the transfer portal too. That's exactly what we're seeing out of Georgia here. I just love the mentality of Kirby Smart. I love any sort of coach that has won titles and has been as successful as he is to humble himself. I think this is one of the great things that Nick Saban did, obviously Smart's mentor. Saban famously hated spread offenses. He was as morally opposed to it as Dabo Swinney is to the transfer portal. But the difference was Saban said the best thing for my team is for me to humble myself and go with the spread offense. Kirby Smart here recognizes the best thing for his team is to humble himself and go to the transfer portal and turn away from some recruiting when it comes to offensive skill positions. I expect Georgia to rely more on the transfer portal at wide receiver and other positions like that, skill guys on offense going forward. But again, I love the strategy from Georgia. It's a great sign for the future.